video where I experiment with making paper mache hat blocks. It all started because I've got quite a few vintage paper mache hat blocks that I've had for a long time, but I couldn't find out any information about how people made them. So I thought, well, I'll have an experimental go and see how we get on. So here we go. First of all, I thought I'll try copying a saucer hat. So I've got a saucer and I covered it with cling film and I cut up, as you can see, thousands of strips of paper. Now, I've realised towards the end of this video that probably this is too big to do and you need to make quite small ones with paper mache. Now, I've put PVA in the water and I realised way too much water and not enough glue. But again, this was all experimentation. So I was wetting all my little bits of paper and then putting them on my cling film and seeing if I could build up a hat block. But as I say, there was too much water and not enough glue, and what would happen after a while is the paper would dry and then just fall off. So it wasn't going too well. I tried putting extra layers on, but it became very thick. So the next experiment, I have got a little bit of espartere, which is a willow-based fabric with a light layer of muslin on the other side, really hard to get hold of. And I had this little bit, so I thought, I know, I'll try it on this dish. So this dish, a little bowl I had in the house, and I've wet my espartere, and I'm now trying to form it around the dish. Now, I don't know if the espartere was too old and been hanging around for a little while, but it was quite tricky, and I put my finger through it at one point. It seemed quite fragile. So, but, you know, I played about. And I think at one point, I had the espartere around the wrong way. So I had the muslin at the top and I had to take it off and redo it. So that's about as good as I can get shape-wise. So then I thought, right, what do I do now? I'll add paper. So once it had dried off, I went back to the paper mache. Now this time I used newspaper, and this time I added a lot of glue, not very much water. So you'll see. Again, I had no idea of how much water to how much glue, so it was all a bit ad hoc. Let's see how we get on. And first of all, I started again putting the glue onto the paper strips. I realised you needed quite small paper strips because you needed to build up the layers without making it very bulky and awkward to fold over the corners. And again, I did some more on the other block. Right, folks, on with my experimentations with paper mache hat blocks. Now, as you saw with this one, I mean, this video is a bit disjointed, but this has taken weeks to get round to doing bits here and bits there. With this one, I had some espartere, or how do you pronounce it? Espartere as my base. I suppose I could have used buckram, but well, that's another trial. And then I've been building it up with paper. Now, I have to say, it doesn't get very stiff, and you have to use small bits of paper so that you can keep the shape nice, you know, you don't deform it. And so far, although it's solid, it's not really solid enough, I don't feel, to block. And this one I've been working on again, and again I think it might deform. So I've had an idea, and I'm going to gesso on top of the paper, let that dry, and then I'm going to put a layer of varnish. Now, you could, what I've got here is plaster of Paris. Now, plaster of Paris is great, but it dries extremely fast on its own, and I don't want it to dry faster than I can actually apply it. So I'm going to be making my own gesso mix. Gesso's used for priming canvases. In my previous job as a clock dial restorer, I used to use gesso. So it's used for a lot of things, but I thought it might work for this. If it doesn't, we'll know, won't we? So what we need is plaster of Paris and then corn flour. Now, I think in the States it's called cornstarch. It's the one that you use for sauces and custards, and it's a much finer flour than normal baking flour, you know, plain or self-raising. You can use ordinary flour, but I'm using corn flour because it's a finer ground flour, and PVA and water. So what I'm going to do is mix up some and give it a go. Oh, I've got a spoon, and I also need a brush, which I've left over the other side. So I'll get that brush. Okie dokie. I always think I'm organised and I'm not. So I'm going to open the plaster. Oh, what I'm going to use is this disposable tub, because once it sets in whatever you're mixing it in, it's hard to get it out. So don't use a decent dish that you think, I've wrecked my dish. So I'm going to only mix up small amounts at a time because I don't know how well this is going to work. So I'm going to use 1, 2, 3 heaped, that's a dessert spoon, but it doesn't matter, of plaster of Paris. And I'll make sure that's sealed up so that no moisture gets in there and sets it rock solid. Then I'm going to add my corn flour. I'm going to use a clean spoon for this because I don't want my plaster of Paris in my corn flour, because I can use the corn flour for baking. So again, didn't have enough spoons. Yeah, me. And I'm going to put the same again of corn flour. So 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to move that to one side. And I'm going to stir that up as much as possible. Probably great if you can sift it together, but I didn't think about that. Right, so I've got lots there. And now I'm going to mix water and PVA. So I'm going to put some PVA. Again, this is a bit, I don't know how much I'm going to need, so I'm doing it a bit ad hoc. If it comes out too runny, I'll be really miserable, won't I? If it comes out too thick, which it's going to. I've got to try and get all the lumps out. It's like a cooking program for hats. And it will start to set fairly soon, so I've got to mix it fairly quickly and get all the powder up from the bottom. So there I am mixing and squidging and adding my gesso and adding a bit more corn flour because it wasn't thick enough. But you needed it sort of like a cream, thick cream consistency for it to be able to brush on. So here I am brushing it onto the paper. I mean, it went on quite nicely. It was quite satisfying brushing it all over. But it took ages to do because I had to do probably 3 coats, and in between the coats I had to sort of speed the drying process up with a hairdryer. So I don't know. I mean, I'd be quite honest, I totally gave up with the round one because I knew it was just not coming out very well and it looked bad, and I knew it was going to be really, really hard to block. So I thought, well, I'll just concentrate on this shape and see how I get on with this one. You know, some people have their bucket lists, like jump out of airplanes or visit Nepal. My bucket lists are things like, see if I can make a paper mache hat block. And then afterwards I think, why did I bother? But there we are. Makes for interesting viewing, doesn't it? So yeah, I painted it all over, and of course as well, you have to wait for one side to dry if you want to do the other side. But really I was only concentrating on the top area. Again, apologies that this is a very disjointed video, but that was the only way I could do it. Right, I've got to the point now where this is becoming unworkable. I can't, it's setting too hard. Do not pour that down the sink, otherwise you'll end up with your drains all blocked up. So scrape it out into the bin. You can wash the brush and the spoon, but don't put any excess down the sink. I'm going to leave those 2 to dry because I want to sand them, add another coat, sand them, add another coat. So they're going to dry now and we'll see how we progress. This is fun, isn't it? So while this was drying, I thought, I'm going to need wire around the edge. I wondered if I could get away without, but I can't. So what I've done is I've used really heavyweight wire, and I've cut lots of strips of buckram, which I've wet, and then I'm putting them over the top and clipping it all in place. So we'll see how that works. Then I stitched around the buckram just to make sure everything was going to stay in. Then I added a layer of PVA tissue, and then what I did was I gave it all a good coat of yacht varnish, and it's now as solid as a rock. So I'm blocking with a couple of layers of cinema. Give it a go, see how it turns out. Now they're my sandbags weighting it down, so it didn't turn out too badly actually. It made quite an impressive hat, but really, it's just not worth the hours that it took me to make and the aggravation, and it will only work with small shapes. So if you do have a go, let me know. I'd be interested to see how you get on. But I hope you've enjoyed watching me make a mess. Anyway, cheers and bye.